guys, how's it going? Welcome to this week's recap video. It's been an incredibly productive week, and we've got a few really beautiful days on the forecast in the mid 70s, and then we're heading back down into the 50s as our high, so we'll see what happens there. That probably means a lot of wind, but things are looking good. I feel like we're on the very tail end of our garden cleanup, and while we've already been planting things, I feel like we'll be able to focus more on that instead of, still thinking about there's roses to cut back, there's hydrangeas to clean up, we need to go rake the spot, So once we're past all of the cleanup, planting, mulching, weeding, all those things.
Well, a lot of drip repair. Paul's been working on, and then I saw he was out spraying weeds in the gravel driveway too today.
So you kind of have to balance all of those things because, there's just a lot to do right now.
Everything kind of happens all at once. Like the weeds start popping up. And for us, if you can take care of it in the spring, you're good through the summer usually because we just don't get enough moisture to where it's like
we
a
still
huge
get
problem.
weeds.
Yeah.
But it's like spurge, puncture vine, bindweed.
But there's like a boom in the spring right about now. There's just weeds that crop up everywhere.
Yeah. So get after that initial flush, and then it's just minimal throughout the rest of the season. Minus the Dirtlands area, because we just kind of mulch right over the top of where there's pasture grass seed. So there's just grass coming up everywhere. But it's such a relaxed space. It's not even like I drive by it and look at all of it. Usually something like that would make my eye twitch.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, we need to get out there. I'm like, nah, it's fine. We'll get after it at some point.
Well, I think, we've been doing this long enough too, where you kind of just realize, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
You can't have everything perfect.
No.
There's
no such thing. At any point of the year, at any time, there's no such thing as having it be perfect. But the second you get all the mulch done and you think, done, it looks perfect. Then you go plant something, or you get a gully washer rainstorm, or whatever that just messes up the mulch.
Right.
Yep. Anyway, I've got several store updates, like just a little bit of a show and tell about some things I'm excited about. Ken was able to get in, and it's been a little while coming. You might remember this winter, Aaron and I took a day off, and we went to Boise to spend the night, and the kids stayed with my parents, and we stopped at a store, and I found some really sweet bud vases, which I have sitting here. Hold on. These right here. Now, they came in a set of 3. Which I broke one. So I'm super excited that Ken was able to get them in. And I don't have the fresh set here in my possession yet, but they're these super thin glass vases that come in multiple different colors. In fact, I have the clear set right here. Look at this. So 3 different shapes. They're perfect for just little bouquets that you want to pick and pop around the house, either individually or in a group. So I'm really excited about that. I think there's like purple and green colored glass as well. There's also this lit orb. Isn't this the coolest thing ever? Now, I only have one of them, and I haven't spent a whole bunch of time, but getting it all perfect. But each one of these little branches, it's all like
it comes
flexible.
As kind of like a fan. Like all the lights are together. You pull them apart.
Right. And then each one of the individual tufts at the end, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lights, and they're all also adjustable. So we spent 5 minutes maybe less. Anyway, I just think they're so cool. So they're meant to either hang like off of a pergola or something, or a tree branch. Wouldn't that be so fairy like? Or I thought one of the kids, actually both of them, would probably like these hanging in their room.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to try to affix them somehow to a garden stake, because I think these would be really fun as like a container centerpiece.
Oh yeah.
Like 4th of July style. Anyway, I just think they're cool.
Do you know how many of those we brought in? Is it limited quantities?
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
We'll have to ask Ken that. But because I'm like, you brought me one. I kind of need 10. I kind of want at least 6, maybe 3. Group 2 groups of 3 somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, also we got these little baskets, which I'm a basket fan. I like any kind of basket. It can be wicker, it can be metal, but I like them for harvesting or whatever decorative purposes. I do like metal in that when you put crops in these, you can hose them off really easily. You put carrots in here that are dirty. You can just take the hose after the whole basket, the carrots and everything, and let them kind of drip dry from there.
As opposed to
a wicker basket. If you get those wet, they can tend to mold if they don't,
Gotcha.
Have a lot of air to dry out, but these just make it a little bit easier. 2 more things. I haven't even had a chance to put these out yet, but they're little plant risers, which I think are so cute. So there's black and then there's green. I'm going to set this set down. But I just imagine being able to, like in the Hartley, on the tables in there, I try to jam as many plants as I can in there. And if you can go different levels with things, it makes it that much easier. So, imagine, setting your vases on something like that. I actually thought this one was a little bit shorter. So you had like a little bit of a graduation. It's just different sizes. But I do believe it comes as a set.
Just chop the legs off of one of them.
Yeah, you could. They're lightweight though. And I like the color. I think my mom would love this set.
Are you just using the store as like an excuse to get things that you want?
Kind of. I went through the catalog and I was like, I kind of like all these.
I want this and this and
it's
this. It's
like the old JCPenney catalogs, Did you do that where you look through them and circle things? Yeah. They always had like a toy section, and like I remember specifically when I was getting into sports, so I played lots of soccer. I remember going through the athletic section and looking at all the cleats and
the jerseys. For me, the basketball, like the 90s.
Right.
Basketball jerseys were a big thing.
Yes, they were. So this is a set of vases right here, the blue and white, which I think is really sweet. And then necks are fairly small on all of them. So it's kind of like a display vase. If that makes sense, like you're displaying one type of something, like put one branch in here that's absolutely beautiful. So it kind of simplifies the whole arrangement thing, as opposed to when you have vases, which I do like low-footed bowls that are wide because you can get a lot of stuff in there. But those arrangements are more complicated for sure. So if you want something simple, I thought these were pretty. That's all. I lied. There's one more thing. We were able to get the dram can in this size right here. This is a 5-liter water can, and it's got the removable thing. We have dram products already on the store.
What was the deal, though, with the smaller one? Like the mold broke or something, and they can't make more of them?
Yeah, so the smallest one, it's not this size. It's the one smaller. I've got one. Should I grab it?
Sure. Yeah, just for comparison, I suppose.
I have liquid grow in the water in here. So the mold that makes this little one broke, and I think that they're supposed to have it up and running again like June-ish. So we're unable to get this size in for a little while, but we do have this one just as an option. So anyway, that was the show and tell for this morning. Thank you for bearing with me. Those are all on gardenanswer.com. Okay, so let's jump into the videos from this past week. The first one is planting up a shade flower bed. And I just loaded up the gator with all the things that I thought would be pretty in the flower bed by our back shade porch. There's a giant maple tree that kind of shades that whole area. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the east side of that bed because, we did lose the honey locust last year. And I do think it provided a little bit of early morning shade, but maybe not last year because it was so sparsely canopied, if that's the right word.
It was pretty much just like the branches that were causing no leaves.
It's so weird. I don't even miss that tree being gone, but I was like grieving that tree being needing to be taken out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Do you should we plant another tree there?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we need to should we just put a shade master? Yeah, we should go down to Andrews today.
Get a shade master? Yeah. Figure out we'll have to bounce it a little bit.
We don't have to plant a huge one. No. We'll probably be in this house forever. Just get whatever size is fairly easy to plant because we can't get the tractor anywhere close.
Yeah.
So it'll be a by hand sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I think I would really like that there. And it's not a problem. It had rot in the middle of the trunk. It's not something that I don't think will transfer to a new tree. I think we just need to plant it higher, make sure that the water's good around it. I just think so many of the existing trees that were here were buried way too deep.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. And then we probably didn't help things out by constantly mulching and.
Well, I wonder about that because how we had that that stacked wall that was kind of laid back. Mm-hmm. I sort of wonder if they raised up the level of that whole area.
Oh,
do you think?
Do
you think that was flat at one point and then it got raised?
I don't know. Are you here to check on the baby chicks? Yeah. Samantha's checking on the chickies. I don't know if you can hear them. They're just softly chirping in the background. They're getting big. I have no idea where I was at.
No.
Oh, we were talking about the locust tree. Anyway, I had some really beautiful things to add to that flower bed. And I have since added a few more ferns, which you probably have seen by the time this video goes out. So we'll just continue to develop that flower bed. And I'm very much so looking forward to that because I feel like there's a few flower beds like the one under the golden rain tree, the back shade, porch area that I have fought to put annuals in. And then I just thought, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. These areas are really weird and difficult and the water situation seems to never be good enough for them. We have to drag hoses out every day to keep the coleus happy that we put in there, even though there's drip. Let's not do that anymore. Let's be a little bit more efficient with our time and our water usage in those areas. And let's put stuff in there that will handle it. So lamium under the golden rain tree, just putting perennials, like tough perennials in that shade area, I think that's just going to be so much better. And then we don't have to monkey with the annuals every year.
Yeah.
And I want to focus on different areas for annuals and not have them absolutely everywhere, because then you're left with nothing in the winter. So it's something to think about, like key areas, you know.
That's a really tough battle
It is.
because, you know, annuals give you so much like bang for your buck.
Yes.
Versus perennials where, you know, a lot of times, depending on the perennial, sometimes they'll bloom for a couple weeks and then they're done for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Or
You
maybe
just have
they'll
to
have
be-
like a, they're kind of trying to push a second,
Yeah.
but in between the dead of the last, you know, blooms.
I think you just have to be strategic about using a lot of foliar accents, and like you're growing this not for the, you're really for the blooms. You're growing this to be like very visually pleasing, even when there's not blooms there. And I think that can be accomplished.
Also this year, I really want to get better. Like if I need to go out there myself, I want to cut back all the things that bloom for a few weeks and then lull. And I feel like in the past, we've done sort of a poor job of cutting things back because there's a little bit of life left in it.
Yeah.
And I think you need to just say enough. We're going to cut it back so that it can actually do a second flush.
Like dianthus. I've always
Yeah.
been like, about dianthus, and I planted it that one time. Remember, we got all those little plugs?
Yeah.
And it was stunning
Right.
when it initially bloomed.
A total carpet of blooms.
Yeah. But then I didn't really know, I guess, or maybe I wasn't brave enough to get in there and just really cut them back, even though there was buds. There were buds mixed in with all of the ones that were already done.
Yeah, there's buds and there's like maybe 10 to 20% blooms that are still blooming.
Yeah.
And so you have to sacrifice all the buds
That's hard to do.
and all the blooms that are still there
Yeah.
in order to get rid of the you know, finished blooming.
I know you were wanting to try dianthus again for that. Maybe we'll do Aaron's dianthus patch.
Maybe.
Just pick a spot and go pick out some dianthus.
is really pretty, but yeah, I think it's one of those things you have to be strong-willed.
Yeah.
In order to, once it's done, you got to mow it down.
And if you know your weakness in that area,
Yeah.
maybe like I have no business growing dianthus, but if you want to try it, go for it. Okay. So Nancy said the daphs that do not have a bloom stem, if moved to a sunny area, will they ever bloom again? Yes, they would. So it's a situation in that, like, do I want to get in there and cull out the ones that aren't blooming? Do I have time to do that? Maybe along the way, if we did a little bit at a time, you know.
It's so tough to try to figure out what the cost is, what your time
Yes,
cost is,
right.
versus just buying a new one. Because if you just let it die, you know, how many minutes does it take me?
Right.
We were trying to run the math on, which is kind of horrible because like we shouldn't be throwing away, you know, plastic unnecessarily, but those
The couplers.
the couplers,
Hey, bud. Checking on the chickens?
our kids.
They're getting bigger, huh? I swear they grew overnight. Anyway, we were talking about the couplers. So we were running the math. Like if we stood here and, you know, cut all the couplers out of the old
We were
drip
replacing,
tube.
the old drip tube.
Yeah, is it cheaper to buy new ones or stand here and spend all the time cutting them out? We were just curious, and we are saving them,
Yeah.
just so you know. It does pencil out in that case,
Yeah.
to where it does save money if you just take the time to cut
Yeah.
them out. But I'm always interested in that now, more than I ever have been. Like, what's the cost and where's the balance?
Yeah.
You know?
You don't want to be wasting things necessarily.
Right.
But when something really doesn't make sense, it's like, well, you know, how can I justify spending the time to save these little bits? Because otherwise you could turn into a hoarder really quickly. If you're just like saving everything for just the sake of saving it because you don't want to throw it out.
Right.
Like there has to be a balance in there somewhere. You just got to find that.
Yeah. And I do try on a lot of things to reposition or replant or reuse plants in ways. And I find almost everything a home if I don't want to take the time to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we go so far as like I was cleaning out lilacs, suckers around lilacs the other day. And you know, some of them, when you pull on them, they're really easy to pull up out of the ground, and they usually have a stem with roots attached. And if I can do that, I cut them and I pot them. I just gave Bethany one the other day. I think it was maybe in this morning's video that went, I don't remember what day, but I had one that was easy to release from the ground. But if they don't come up easily, I cut them off at ground level. I don't waste the time pulling
You
them
mean
up.
you're illegally propagating them?
That's right. And then I did more cleanup, and I this weekend that I didn't film, and I was pulling up lilac suckers again, and I was able to get 3 out of the ground. So I potted those up, and Bethany took them home. So I try, like in most cases, if it makes sense to try to find it a home, if somebody wants to try to grow on a plant from a start like that, awesome, you know, and so we do our best. Anyway, Lexi said, love your videos so much. My husband and I watch almost every night while making dinner. Question, how many cameras are you using to film a video like this while you're on your own? I can't imagine moving one camera before each shot, filling up the bucket, stepping over the hedge, and then dumping into the gator. Maybe 3 cameras? Keep the fantastic content coming, please. Yeah, it can be a little bit of a trick, but it's almost autopilot at this point for me. I remember in the beginning when I was starting to film on my own, because like this whole video I did all by myself with cameras and everything. I remember it being kind of overwhelming, and I would try to capture every little thing. And like, it does make for a more dynamic video the more shots you can get and the more time you spend on that. But with other things going on in my life, because I've got a lot going on, not just what I'm doing for videos, I don't get as many shots, I don't think, as I used to maybe. Or maybe I've just kind of honed in on the ones,
more efficient.
Maybe the ones that actually make a difference. So I use 2 cameras. I use one camera that's on a tripod that I'll move around to get like montage sort of shots. And then I have my handheld. That's it, typically. If Aaron gets involved, like if you have your nice cameras out, like you got those out when I did the flower arrangement recently in the greenhouse, and you had 2 cameras on me for that.
The problem is that, things have changed a lot with having kids.
Yeah.
Before I could, and also our property is larger. There's just more things going on. So when I am out there with nicer cameras, like I have to man the cameras the whole project because the lighting can change. You have to have like a cameraman, right? Whereas if you just put a GoPro out, it's like GoPros, they don't look great all the time, but they're like just good enough to where you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
And if the light gets dark, it kind of compensates for that. And, you can have them out in the rain, the sun can beat on them, whereas like if you use an iPhone, they overheat in, seconds seemingly. So anyway, I would love to use nicer cameras all the time, but you have to have a dedicated camera person to do that.
Yeah.
And I just don't have the time anymore with the kids and all the other.
Yeah, we don't have childcare, you guys. So we did when the kids were little. And like right now, they're playing, They're really good at just keeping themselves busy doing things. And you guys are going to have to see the fort that they've been building with old pallets. Aaron's been screwing together pallets, and they've got like a house out there right by the hillside. They love to spend time out there. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So you're kind of managing the kids and all the business side of everything that we do while I'm out filming videos. And then we're pretty good at balancing it though at this point. And we've got good kids. So it works out.
It's harder for you and I to both focus on a singular project.
Right.
And just do that thing all day long with the kids. It's kind of like we need to swap back and forth between you doing some things and me doing some things. And the kids help us with projects as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like in videos, they'll come and go.
Yeah, they come and go. It was nice the day we did the flower arrangement because it was like the lighting was the same all day. So you didn't even, you turned the cameras on, made sure everything was good. Yeah. And it only took me about 10 minutes to put together that arrangement. So you just left and I had to turn the cameras on. You can look at the clouds
and it was like an overcast day, I think. And you can tell like, okay, this is going to stay the same. I don't need to stand here for the whole time. But most of the time, we have clouds that come and go. Man,
we struggled in the beginning so much because we didn't have the studio. We didn't have the greenhouse. Yeah. We didn't have...
No one knew we struggled, though.
No, but it was such a struggle.
Yeah.
And I remember being miserable doing some of the projects because it was so cold and it was windy. I remember in particular one time we were doing a flat lay, kind of like a pressed flower or dried flower situation sort of project. And it was really breezy and it was cold and I'm trying to like glue these really lightweight things down and they're wanting to blow off the table. And I was just like, but we had to do it like to be consistent and stay on our schedule. We try really hard not to have upsets in our schedule, in our posting schedule. So you power through, but boy, we're so lucky to have these sorts of spaces now to be in. Oh, okay. Lisa said, would it be okay to put a layer of compost over the flower bed to hide the leaves? Would they just break down and add to the compost over time? Yeah, that's totally fine. I think so long as the mulch doesn't come up over the crown of plants, you'll be good. Depends on the layer of leaves too. Like if it's a super thick mat of leaves, that the leaves are kind of thick and leathery and it'll take them forever to break down. I don't know how much is too much. I think if it's a light layer of leaves, you're okay. And it also depends on if you've had bug issues. If you've had spider mites, we don't leave any, I don't want to say any because we can't get all of them, but we don't leave leaves down because we have such bad problems with spider mites and thrips from year to year that if we leave our leaves down, then we're just leaving all of the eggs that overwintered, and we don't want to do that. So Bloom Chirp said, Laura, you are so faithful at wearing gloves now. Are you getting used to it? Is it helping your hands? I try to make myself wear them, but it's a pain. Yeah, so I am wearing them quite a lot. I actually bring them in here every single night. So we have these on at the store. These are the Nitrile Touch gloves.
Pretty standard gloves, I think.
Yeah, they are.
They're like sold in every garden center.
Yeah, they're sold at a lot of places, but I really like them. This is what my mom and sister and I think pretty much everybody down at the garden center uses. So if you're local, you can pick them up down there so you can try them on. I wear the size small, but they are very thin. You feel like you can do stuff and you don't feel like your hands are stiff. Some gloves you put on that are stiff. I do still like the Felco gloves. They are a bit thicker, but they're nicer for colder weather. So you'll probably see those come out in the fall. But these have been really nice. And I do feel like my hands are a little bit nicer than they were. Like I don't have permadirt stuck in my hands. Like before I couldn't even clean my fingers off. And so, or I couldn't clean out underneath my fingernails. I was just like stuck in there. No matter how hard I tried to clean them.
Are you not feeling as claustrophobic as you were? Because that was one of the things that I used to hear you say is like, I just feel a little claustrophobic wearing gloves. And so you would do it from time to time. You'd wear gloves.
Yeah.
But I feel like the reason that you didn't a lot of the time was just because you liked free range.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, I feel that way about socks too, but I don't feel that way as strongly about socks as I used to. I don't know. Maybe I'm evolving.
Yeah.
And Drake said, great video as usual, thank you. I'm in zone 7B8A, North Alabama. I have 2 red maples and would love to plant a lush shade garden, but sadly the roots under the maples choke out everything. Anyone have any ideas of what I could try?
Speaking of that, I noticed under the red point maples on our west side, I don't know if you're going to keep being able to plant annuals in there.
Get a ground cover. That's what I'm going to do. Get a nice lush looking ground cover. And maybe like if you can't get around the roots, I know it's hard. Underneath that maple tree, it's incredibly hard to dig.
Did you order annuals under there
Nope.
this year? Oh, really?
I did not order annuals.
Did you kind of know that was probably going to be an issue?
And the golden rain tree? Nope. I didn't order annuals for that area. Actually, I didn't order annuals specifically for many areas this year, except for around the Hartley. I do have a specific scheme in mind. Like last year, we did the beautiful salmon geraniums with the Bordeaux Supertunias. This is glorious. I think this year it's gonna surprise you, but it's going to be, I think, really, really pretty. But I ordered for that. I ordered for like the end of the loop, because I want, there to be consistency in what that looks like. But overall, I just ordered like this and that. And because I knew we didn't have the big pots along the fence, we don't need to match everything. And when you don't need to match a bunch of stuff, you can just get a little bit of this and that and, put together some fun stuff.
So the answer is ground cover?
I would do a ground cover. If you have a really hard time planting under there and you still want it to be full of something, I would just work on that and just let it be maybe more of a singular plant sort of situation. But that in itself can be a very peaceful thing as well. You were reading or telling me something about how much you could add over tree roots a year.
Yeah, I read it online. So
yeah, who knows?
But it was like you can add 4 to 6 inches of mulch over an established tree. Mm-hmm. This is in a situation where if roots are protruding from the ground, so let's say like in your lawn or just anywhere where you can see the roots, they were saying you can cover them by like 4 to 6 inches without causing damage to the tree. So if you go over that, you start to run the risk of smothering them. Because like roots are meant to be under the ground. They're coming up for oxygen, but once they have that, they just need, because I'm sure like some oxygen goes back and forth. So if you put something light over the top and you're not like packing it down super hard. Yeah, I've wondered about that, because like at my sister's house, they've got that tree, and I've always kind of wondered like what would happen if you brought in mulch. Because what is that tree, like a poplar or
yeah. It's massive.
It's a really big tree.
Beautiful. It's a pretty tree.
But it's got
like
lots of roots,
yeah,
a lot of protruding roots.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Maybe some of you guys can weigh in on that. Art Girl said, how do you remember all the plant names, nomenclature? Very impressive. Just lifelong experience. I have plant favorites and can barely remember their names, let alone a scientific classification. Ask me a plant name and I can most of the time remember it. Ask me a person's name, forget about it. I am so bad with people's names. I'm trying really hard not to be, but I think that we all have strengths in different areas. And I'm faced with plants day in and day out, all days of the year. So I think you just kind of like yeah. But there are times where I look at a plant and I'm like, I know what this is. I know what this plant is.
Yeah.
It's like on the tip of my tongue. What is it?
Well, and sometimes you call it wrong, like Queen of Sweden.
Yeah, and I was calling it Olivia Rose. I was trying to grasp, but it wasn't sounding right, and I think it was because I wasn't identifying it right at all. One of you guys had to remind me of what rose I had in my own garden, and that happens. And there's a lot of plants I have absolutely no idea about, like plants you can grow in the South. Some of those things we can't grow here, I have zero experience with, and I would probably have a very hard time identifying them. So I think it just depends on what you're around all the time. Lori Platt said, I have enjoyed watching and learned so much from your videos over many years. Did you take the tree face off that tree, or am I thinking it's the wrong tree? No, Jeremy the juniper is still there. Tree face along the west side. I liked the little bit of whimsy it brought to your beautiful yard. Yeah. So previous owners, I think, maybe it was the owners before them, put the tree face on. I don't know who put the tree face on there, but it's
so bizarre.
But it exists, and I think it's funny, and I like it too.
It's like Rosie the Gnome.
Yeah, which Rosie the Gnome found a new home. I just couldn't do it with Rosie the Gnome. I mean, it was nice of them to send it out, and they were hoping, I mean, they've been asking Henry Studio for me to feature gnomes for a really long time.
Yeah.
And they didn't ask me if they could send it out, and I didn't ask them to send it out.
Yeah.
So it was like a surprise thing, and they just said, we hope it shows up in your garden. And so it did for a little while. Yeah. And then I was talking to a gal, her name's Sherry, down at the garden center. She's really sweet. And she watches our videos, and she was looking for a gnome. And I said, hey, because Monica was like, we don't have any gnomes, which they didn't. I'm like, I do. Do you want Rosie? And she was like, yes, I would love her in my garden. So she is in a garden where she is going to be treasured and loved. And I think that's the best sort of situation. Tara said, I used your winter sowing method and I'm shocked I have tons of seedlings. Thank you. When do I move them to the ground? Do I up pot them first? No, you don't need to up pot them. When it gets nice enough, you need to flip that lid open so that you can start hardening off those seedlings. And it depends on what time, but typically for us, we can't plant out seedlings like that until sometime in May, depending on what the plant is. I think I just said that. If it's a hardy perennial and you don't have a lot of frost on the forecast, you can probably plant them out. But you want to harden them first. So open that lid during the day for, a couple hours the first day, and then close it, and then open it again the next day for a longer amount of time until you've kind of gradually exposed the plant to more and more outside life, which the winter sowing, you're so much further ahead in the hardening off process that it won't take very long. And the seedlings are tough. Mary said, Laura, do you ever run into snakes when you're cleaning the beds? On occasion. We'll have a snake running around, slithering around in our garden. They're just little garden snakes, though. We don't have, we have rattlesnakes in our area, but they're usually out in the desert, like in the hills beyond where we are. We get like bull snakes, is that right? Bull snakes? Like we had that giant one.
It's a sign of a healthy garden, right?
Yeah. So we had a giant bull snake in our townhouse garden. I remember I called you. I was on my lunch. And I went out to the back patio. It was that big black clay container that I just repotted the Japanese maple in. It was in the corner of our patio. It also had a Japanese maple in it at that time. And I looked down and I couldn't see the end of it and I couldn't see the beginning of it. And it was wrapped around the entire base of that pot, like this huge. And I don't know snakes one from the other unless I hear its tail, shaking, which I've been around a rattlesnake out in the wild before. Anyway. So you were just like, just leave it alone, it'll go away. And it did. It ended up in your parents' yard, I think, next door. Next video is ground cover plant haul, 31 variety show and tell. So I just gone to the garden center with my mom and the kids. It was on a Sunday. They were closed, so the gates were locked and the kids could run around and play safely without, anybody coming and going. It was so nice. And we just, we had tea and we just walked around and looked at things, and I ended up with a bunch of ground cover options. So I thought it'd be fun to sit and just chat through some of those, because a lot of them, I think the first 10 I talked about, 10 of them were really good as steppables. And that's such a kind of a hot topic. I think it's always been a kind of a hot topic for people who are wanting to swap their lawns out for something alternative that's either less maintenance or whatever, maybe it has blooms so it feeds the pollinators, or, whatever the reason might be. So we went over those 10 and then I showed 21 more after that. It was a lot.
Yeah.
But there were so many beautiful options, and that's just a drop in the bucket of all the varieties and options that are out there. I just find that amazing. Margaret said, love all of these. I desperately need some ground cover in so many areas. Is there a list of what you spoke about here? I hope. I don't know that I actually listed them Probably not. You just have to watch the video and write them down. Carrie said, Laura, will you try some of these cool ground covers by the rocks of the pond and Dreamstream? That is the plan. In fact, there are several of them, the ones that I don't have as much experience with, and I said which ones those were, that I only got one of, so I could try them somewhere, see how they did, and then I can expand on that if they thrive really well for us. Wonder said, with the ground covers that can handle foot traffic, do you know which one of these plants could handle dogs running using the restroom without the plant turning yellow?
Zero.
I mean, grass, which is tougher than I think all of those ground covers, has a hard time holding up to dog traffic. Denise said, very helpful. I'm bored with what I see at the big box stores. Maybe I can find these online. Do you have a suggestion on which vendors I could try? You know, you might try Little Prince. Has some really fun options. Little Prince plants. Is it Little Prince plants or Little Prince of Oregon? You can Google it and find their website. They sent a... is it Mellitus? Bastard balm is the common name. It's a beautiful perennial that they sent out in one of their surprise boxes to us. And I want more of that plant. And I've got it on their website and I haven't found it. I'm like, are you not growing it anymore? I really want more. But they've got some really obscure, really interesting, unique plants on their website. If you are local in this area, all of those ground covers came from my parents' garden center and you can find them down there. As far as other websites, I don't really know other ones. I mean, I've had experience with Little Princes, and Mountain Crest Gardens has some of the sedum options. They have many, many more than what I showed in that video, and we have experience with their plants and how they ship them, and I'm happy with how they arrive. So those are the only two companies, and Proven Winners, who sends us plants.
Yeah.
They do have perennial ground cover options as well. We just got our perennial load in, so I didn't have any of the new perennials they sent out at the time I did this video, but we have since, and you will see that, I think, right before or right after this video, of the stuff that they sent out, and their stuff always arrives beautifully. So those are the three companies I have experience with in terms of mail order. Rebecca said, is someone installing a flagstone pathway soon and looking for a ground cover? This was super helpful. That makes me very happy to hear. Question, why does the garden center sell the Zone 8 baby tiers if it's not your zone? Is it just to accommodate those who will use it in other projects, such as summer containers, as you have done? Absolutely. Fairy gardens, containers, you can use it and all of those sorts of things. And it won't survive the winter, but you could, if you've got a structure, it might not even, depending, like if you're a zone 7, you might be able to move it into protection that's not necessarily heated really warm, and it may survive for you. So there are people that will try to winter things over that way as well. It's kind of like just buying an annual.
There's a lot of people that have greenhouses that shop at Andrews.
Yeah, there are. McAllister said, love your videos, hate all the ads, 6 interruptions, used to have maybe 1. Why?
Yeah, YouTube is changing things, and they're kind of taking more control away from us. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot we can do about it. I would suggest maybe looking into YouTube Premium. I think like YouTube Premium Lite is $6.99 or $7.99 a month. It doesn't take ads off of everything, but I believe it does take ads off of videos like ours.
So there's what is the Lite?
I don't know. There's
different tiers.
There's different tiers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's like a family tier where you can get multiple, people in the same family that,
if you consume a lot of YouTube content, that might be worth it.
Yeah. Not having any ads that pop up. I mean, I know it's disruptive. It's what funds us. Yeah. It's like a huge part of what funds the videos. So, on one hand, I'm thankful for the ads. On the other hand, I get how I don't like ads. I have premium so that I don't see the ads.
I didn't have premium. Like, we didn't upgrade to the family plan. I don't think you realized that I was watching ads still for years.
Yeah. Well, you were trying to show me something and an ad popped. I was like, what are you doing? Watching an ad.
It's just how I see I mean, I don't watch a ton of YouTube. So like, it's
just like anything. If you watch enough YouTube, it might be worth it.
Yeah.
To pay for that, but
it's unfortunate, and there's nothing we can really do about it. So we do apologize, and we do appreciate you still sticking through and
trudging through the ads. Yeah,
it's what keeps us here. K West said, absolutely love this video. Thank you. Great information. I want to try some of those. Question, with how much Aaron loves his lawn, would he be okay with having those ground covers instead of real lawn? Would he ever consider replacing lawn with one of those ground covers? If yes, which one?
Answer is no. I feel like that question's a little bit like, I know you love shade trees, but would you consider, this little ornamental that gets 12 feet tall? It's like, well, no, because I like shade trees. So it's not lawn. I like lawn. Mm-hmm. These are not lawn. I think that they're pretty and they have their place.
Sure.
It's just not It's not a lawn, and I don't see it as a replacement as such.
I 100% agree. I wouldn't replace lawn. I love lawn. I think it's peaceful. I think that it looks homey. The kids love to play on it. I mean, we've been playing catch. We've been getting out the baseball gloves and balls and playing out on the front lawn, and the kids just run. And Bethany brings her goats still a couple times a week, and we do goat races in the front lawn and just like run the distance, and it's good. And you couldn't do that on ground covers, even if they're steppables. They just won't. They'll take some foot traffic. Like, they'll take you walking around on it, but like heavy play and like a ton of activity, I don't think any of them would really love that.
Right.
The Jilly Killy said, is there a specific name for the plant known as creeping veronica? Do you have experience with different types of creeping veronica, or are all creeping veronicas evergreen? There are several different varieties. The tag says creeping veronica. I think it's Veronica. Is it repens? Hold on. Let me see if that's a thing. I'm taking that out of the back of my brain like I know what I'm talking about, and I don't. Yeah. Veronica repens. That's the botanical name on that one. Can't believe I remembered that. See, that's the situation where I'm like, it was there. Was I sure? No. Heather said, no mention of your favorite, lamium. Question, are the oregano and thyme varieties edible? Yes, the oregano and thyme are both fully edible herb plants, and the lamium is an amazing choice. And I didn't have an example to show. And like I said, there are so many, like thousands and thousands of different options for ground covers, and there's just no way to go through it all in the same video. But lamium is amazing, and it would be top of list for me for sure. Tanya said, which one of these is going to cover the ground the quickest? Probably a vinca. Out of all of them, I would say the vinca would definitely take off and grow the quickest. I'm trying to think of every single variety I talked about that day, because some of them, I mean, are pretty decent. Like the thyme varieties are pretty decent spreaders. Veronica is a pretty quick spreader. Such a dainty little thing that, it spreads out relative to the size that you started with. But vinca, vines out really quickly. The next video was, I've wanted to do this project for so long, the most epic strawberry beds. We put in 8 very tall raised beds just for strawberries. And it's been a dream of mine for lots of years. I mean, not just the years I've been talking about it, but lots of years. I've thought, you know what, those little itty bitty crops that grow this tall, that I'm on my hands and knees bent over for hours harvesting, I would love to have a situation where they were, they're pretty close, but not quite this.
What are they, 3 feet tall?
Yeah, I don't know what this is. But anyway, they're awesome. They're made from cedar. We had the crew who just did our barn project in the 3rd bay, which we haven't showed an update on. It's not quite set up yet, but they built those beds. I was talking to him and asked him, like, is this a project you could do this spring, or is it like going to be out in the fall? Or because I didn't know how busy he was. And he said, I think we can. They're so simple. I think we can just kind of work them in around projects. I can have them done for you in about a week. Like, what? So I was very excited about it. So we got those all set up, filled, and drip run to them and planted with strawberries in that video. And it ended up taking, I think it was like a 3-day process with like little bits of work here and there that we could get done. And the weather was kind of weird through that whole process. But Jennifer said, hey guys, what a wonderful upgrade. A couple questions. Could you have skipped biotone and used berrytone right at planting? Absolutely. Would planting the same varieties together in a container cause any cross-pollination to the strawberries? I didn't experience that. I have 5, I don't know if strawberries do that, like maybe some of you could speak to that, but I had 5 varieties and a lot of each one of the varieties planted out in the cut flower garden for 4 years, and they were awesome, and they stayed true, as far as I can tell, to how they were in the beginning as how they were in the end. And do you need to paint or stain the cedar to extend its lifespan? Nope, that's the wonderful part about cedar. Those will age out and gray in color, and they will look absolutely beautiful. I didn't want to stain them the same color as the fence because I wanted there to be some contrast. I wanted to still be able to tell that there's a black fence there. And I prefer the look of grayed out raised beds as opposed to stained beds. Kind of like our raised bed garden up here. It's got the black fence around it with the grayed out wood inside, and I think it looks really pretty. Rachel said, with taller raised beds like this to overwinter plants like strawberries, can you put any plants that are in your zone? I know for pots you say to aim for the plant to be 1 zone lower. I'm in Wisconsin zone 4, but wasn't sure if zone 4 strawberries would winter over in beds like this for me. If the bed is big enough, they should do fine. I mean, I've had strawberries in those galvanized tubs with the blueberries for a few years, and they come back really well. You just need to make sure that they get moisture. I think that's the biggest reason why plants die in containers, because they're not getting enough moisture and there's not enough like soil reservoir around them, like when they're in the ground, for them to draw moisture from. So I think that's the biggest thing, and making sure that the pot's big enough to accommodate. Like if you're planting a strawberry in a little pot like this, forget about it. It's going to die most likely if it, gets really super duper cold and if it's not getting proper moisture. Bonnie said, "Hi, Laura and Aaron. I have a question. Is there a reason why you decided to fill the boxes full from the ground up instead of having a false bottom? Better drainage, maybe?" We just figured, we talked about doing a false bottom, and we just figured we've got piles of free stuff sitting out in the dirt lands. Let's just fill them up most of the way, like however deep we would have done that false bottom. Let's just fill it up to that point, and then we'll put the good raised bed mix at the top. So that's what we decided to do. And I do feel like that adds extra insulation, and it also adds the ability to hold on to more moisture to keep the plants happier in the winter, especially.
It's a lot of weight on a false bottom as well.
It is.
It kind of just seemed like, well, it'd also make them a little more top heavy because there's nothing on the bottom.
Yeah.
So like they could tip over, theoretically speaking, if there was a lot of weight at the top and not a lot at the bottom. Yeah, since we have all that dirt and mulch out there, that kind of was composting. I mean,
there was earthworms I didn't show it, but I should have.
Yeah. I
mean, those chips are so broken down that we're not going to deal with a ton of settling, I don't think. Not like you would if you had bigger, lighter things that could, I don't know. It just seems more compact.
Yeah.
But there was earthworms all over in it. I did see, and I don't know if it ended up in here, but somebody asked, why not, like there's beds that are up on legs. Why waste all of it wasn't a waste. Like we're utilizing free stuff from the dirt land. So the stuff we put in there, it didn't cost us money, and
we've got the tractor.
Yeah.
So it's not like a ton of hard work to get the dirt in there.
And having 8 beds all on legs would look absolutely ridiculous out there. It would look like 8 beds getting ready to take off and like walk down the lane. It would just be too much visually. I think having the weight out there does look way better than it would have looked with beds on legs. Not against beds on legs whatsoever. I planted in beds on legs before. In fact, Monica just came and got one of our Gardener Supply ones that we've had for years to put along one side of her fence because it's the right space, and I wasn't using it. So I said, you could come get it if you want to use it and have it. And she's filling it with strawberries.
Nice.
So super fun. Sarah said, wondering what happened to the 2 green stock planters you filled with strawberries and runners a couple of years ago. Did you get a crop? Yes, we did. And they ended up on a pallet. I think they all ended up at Bethany's house. Not the planters. I think she took the strawberries out to plant in her garden because it was during the Dreamstream thing. They were kind of in the way, and we were like, you know what? Let's just collapse these, get them out of the way, get them in storage for now. And they were dealing with spider mites and stuff too. So I think we cut them all back and sprayed them, and then they went out to Bethany's house is what happened there. I have to think about those things, the order in which that happened. KT Hoopify said, can someone explain to me why the drip tape goes under the land and sea? Wouldn't that clog up the emitters? I guess I always thought drip should sit on top of the soil. The only reason why you need to have it up, or why we would leave it on top of the soil, is so that we could see that they're working properly, but we had already tested everything fully, and I knew that all the emitters were working, so having them underneath the soil actually helps with the drip tape not breaking down as quickly. It's not exposed to the full sun, which weakens the plastic. And it looks a lot better, and they stay in place better when they're weighted down.
I also saw somebody commented about having the drip tape facing up, like the holes facing up. I know you've mentioned it before, but it's intended to be that way because the sediment will fall to the bottom. Gravity will fall, keep it down at the bottom, and just the water will pop up out of the top because of the pressure.
Right. Flute Enthusiast said, where are the blueberries going? They are still in their tubs, and they're sitting out by the high tunnels. We'll see what happens with those.
Waiting for a place.
Waiting for a place. It might be that we just organize them out there. They kind of fit in with the Red Barn aesthetic, honestly. So maybe we'll have a little blueberry patch out there. And I have picked up a few more blueberry plants. I don't know where they're going exactly. Might need to go get more tubs. I don't know. I just love blueberries. I love them, especially straight off the plants. And the kids love to pick them. Anything off the plants. They were picking service berries and eating service berries last year. And a couple nights ago, we were sitting out by the pond with the fire going, and the service berries are in bloom. And Benjamin goes, "Oh, Mom, look, those are the trees we pick all the berries and eat from." Like, yeah, you know what a service berry is. That is so cool, I think. Jane Denton said, will the plants survive easily over the winter? I'm in zone 4B. Would they survive the winter here? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what zone those are. I don't know if they're rated down to a zone 4. They survive in the ground for us, that's for sure. Let me see if I can find a zone like on the seascape variety. Oh, there's zone 4 through 9. So you might do okay with those. The honeyoy, I guess is how you pronounce the name of the other strawberry. I was saying honey eye. I don't know. It's named
Is it
after.
regional or are you just saying it
No,
wrong?
I think I said it wrong. Honey eye is a zone 3 through 8. It's a June bearing, but they bear a ton of strawberries and they're really tasty. I think it's named after a place.
Oh.
And so people
How's it spelled?
were good enough to let me know. Honeoye.
Oh,
Honeyoy,
that makes sense.
I suppose. Nikki Hunter said, I'm absolutely in love with those strawberry beds. Will you top dress them with anything? Probably some straw is what I'm thinking, because I would like to have the berries sitting on straw as opposed to sitting on the soil surface. I just don't have any straw on hand. I got to go find some. Resin Bouquet said, do seascape strawberries create runners? How long do they live for? Will you need to replace them in the future? They do create runners. So usually what we do is strawberries have like a 5-year lifespan. Years 2 and 3 are the most productive in the lifespan of the strawberry plant, like the mother plant that you put in. And then years 4 and 5, you'll kind of notice a decrease in production. So you can go a couple different routes after they stop being as productive. I know a lot of commercial growers will like plow them in after, 3 years and start fresh. You can start with fresh mother plants, or you can selectively keep certain runners. Like you can pin them down to the soil, let them root, and then cut the rest of them out, because they will create a lot of runners. Cut the rest of the runners out and make sure that the plant, the one that you're saving, has enough room to grow so that that one can take over as you end up removing the mother plants, if that makes sense. You're kind of like in a rotation sort of situation. Chris R. Fan said, so thrilled that you finally got your raised strawberry beds and what beauties they are. You may have said, but I didn't catch it. Where did you get them, or were they custom made by someone local? They sure are wonderful and will provide many years of enjoyment. Yeah, so like I mentioned, the guys who did the barn project built them and they did a great job. The last thing I did want to mention, because I didn't see that asked in any of these questions that were grabbed this morning, was the reason why we used the boards to fill, because I noticed questions about why didn't you just fill them the same way as you did the first row of beds and just dump all the soil in. It was because we didn't have enough room to back the tractor up in between the arbs and that second row of boxes. It was way too tight. So that's why we were limited on how we could fill those up, and we used the boards, and like you guys had that really good idea. It ended up being pretty slick.
It was funny to me how you were like, I don't know what you're doing. Well, I was
picturing it somehow differently. We don't speak the same language when it comes to projects at all. And so they're explaining it to me. I'm like, that makes no sense. But once we got it, I'm like, you guys could have explained this way better. I would have understood.
I felt like we did.
I was imagining like a funnel sort of situation, the way you were explaining it. Like you'll stand with the board and I'll stand with the board on either side of the bucket, and then you can dump and it'll all go into the bed. And I'm like, okay, so we're kind of like creating a little bit of a funnel for the wider, bucket of the tractor to be.
So you didn't think we were going to fill 2 beds? You thought we were going to fill one bed.
I was picturing the one bed.
Gotcha.
And a funnel situation.
Yeah.
But then you guys were cutting the boards weird, and I'm like, this isn't. I don't get it.
Well, yeah, if you thought we were just doing one bed, you'd be confused.
Next video was baby chicks planting by the pond and fertilizing big trees. So my mom and I had ordered baby chicks. I got 5 buff Orpingtons. My mom got 12 new babies. So she got 6 Barred Rock and 6 buff Orpingtons. And we went to the local hatchery. It's sort of local. It's in Caldwell, which is like 30 minutes for the 30-minute drive. We drove over with the kids and picked them up, and it was super fun. And we got them all settled in their new home, which they're not making a peep. They're probably sleeping. Then we planted a bunch of things by the pond. Bunch of beautiful stuff. Some rue, some soapwort. I mean, just iris, beautiful stuff. And while I was doing that, you were fertilizing the big trees.
Yeah.
So Judith Higgins said, what gloves are you wearing? We went over that. Waterfall FW said, what happens with the soapwort come summer? Will it bloom again this year? Will it go back to blooming in summertime rather than spring next year? It will be on its normal schedule next year. So next year, so what will happen this year? It's done blooming, or will be done blooming. We'll shear off the blooms, and then it'll be just like a nice green mat out there. Just a nice ground cover underneath and around those Arctic fire dogwoods. And that's kind of what I want in that area. I really want to get a lot of the soil covered. I don't want to see a lot of soil around that area. I just want it to be full and lush. It'll take us a while to get there. And then next year, when it wakes up on normal weather schedule and not in a heated greenhouse, it will bloom early summer. So sometime like late May, early June, usually. Mom Ag said, can I move iris in the spring and still get them to bloom this year? I'm making a new garden bed and wanted to move them last fall, but just ran out of time. Probably. I don't know. I think most people move them late summer, early fall. But if you need to move them to create a new bed, I would just do it. I mean, they might be a little less in bloom than they would if you leave them, or you can wait either way. But I just am of the mind, if you want to do something, just do it. You might sacrifice a few blooms, but at least you'll get started on your new bed. That's always fun. We Love R7 said, how many years do you fertilize trees? You were talking about this. We didn't really explain.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I didn't really do any explaining in the.
I didn't explain. There's lots of things I forget to say in videos.
Yeah. So, no, we do not fertilize established trees. It looks weird because these look like established trees, but they're not established trees. They were transplanted there last fall. Mm-hmm. So because they were transplanted, I'm treating them kind of like a new plant that is going to need a lot of nutrients because it's going to be spending a lot of energy working on roots. So that's why I use so much fertilizer. When you look at the bag of Tree Tone, how much fertilizer it says to use, it's kind of crazy actually. When you look at it, I think it does it by the diameter of trunk. And you start adding it up and you're like, that's like 20 bags.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's a lot. So I just wanted to make sure that these new trees had a lot of nutrients as they're establishing roots, because they're kind of like new plants since they got transplanted. So I don't go around, it's not an every year thing where I go around and put that much Tree Tone on trees that have been in the ground for 15 years. So there you go.
Yes. Ann Henry said, did you spread the blue flag iris out a little bit, or did they work better when clustered together? I don't think it's necessarily a matter of whether or not they work better clustered together. I could have spread them out a little bit more, but I did. I did spread them out a tiny bit more than they were in the container. And hopefully they fill in that space. They're so pretty. Beth said, my husband says my motto is, a plant can't possibly be in the right place until it's been moved 3 times. What is the most you've ever moved a single plant? 3 times, I think. We moved that Scarlet Curl Willows. Initially planted, moved once. So the planting, moved once, moved a second time. So it was 3 actions on that one tree to get it in the right spot. Carol said, congratulations on the new additions. Did the kids name them? Samantha was giving them names on the way home.
Can you tell them apart?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was like, are you sure you don't want to just name them Chicken 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? And she was coming up with like Zara and I can't remember all. She said Lara.
Lara?
And my mom was like, are you sure you want to name one Lara? It's pretty close to your mom's name, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's stuck because they're not calling them by name. Brenda Cook said, the baby chicks are so cute. Have you ever tried Proven Winners Pardon My Chartreuse Nepeta? It is gorgeous. Pardon My Chartreuse Nepeta.
That's not a Nepeta.
What's Pardon My Chartreuse?
I don't think it's Pardon My Chartreuse either.
Are you sure?
I think it's something similar to that.
Pardon My Chartreuse. Yeah, there's like a whole Pardon My sort of series of Monarda or Bee Balm is the common name.
It's got to be Pardon My Cerise.
That would make sense. Pardon My Cerise Monarda. I haven't tried that particular
the
variety.
Closest one to...
If that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
As far as Nepeta goes...
Because the Proven Winners Nepeta is all like cat themed.
Yeah, there's Catwalk, which is a new one. Lemon Perfection. Both of those sitting in the high tunnel right now.
Meow.
Cat's Meow.
Pajamas.
Cat's Pajamas, yeah. I'm just double checking that there's not... Yeah, that's it for those. Dorothy said, will you be keeping the other chickens when these chicks are big enough to put in the coop? Yes, chicks are so sweet when they're small like that. Yes, we will. So once they're big enough, like it'll probably be mid to late May, we'll just section off part of the chicken coop and let the new ones be in there. So we'll keep them separate from each other for a little while so they can get used to each other, and then we'll slowly introduce them together. But the 2 we have 2. One of them died. It's been some weeks ago. I don't think I've ever mentioned it. And Paul found her and couldn't figure out any reason why she would have died. She wasn't egg bound. She wasn't sick. She was fine the night before. I was out there the night before and she was just done.
Well, she's how many years old?
They're fairly old-ish. So, I mean, that might start happening, but we're getting a couple eggs. Most days we get 2 eggs right now from the 2 chickens we have out there. Some days it's just 1. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, I'll keep them until something happens like that. I mean, nothing got into the run Everything was fine. So that's just kind of how it goes with animals like that. Sometimes it's kind of like with plants. Sometimes there's no explanation and you just have to kind of go on. Last video was replacing dead plants, transplanting delphiniums, and formal flower garden pathway update. Plus, I think in that video I did a bunch of extra garden cleanup just at the very end. So there was a few dead plants I needed to address. A dead Japanese maple in a container, some smothered out boxwoods at the end caps of the Hartley, and then we dug up delphiniums in the formal flower garden and got those planted, and they're all looking great, including the ones that I divided that were wilted that day. And then we took a look at the formal flower garden pathways, which are looking great. Sheila said, did you say why the boxwoods died? I did. I said they got smothered out by the plain blue salvia that was growing in there the past season. So I had them in there. They kind of grew up and flopped over. They were beautiful, beautiful plants. And I just didn't think about the fact that I needed to get those up off of the boxwoods. And you can tell where the plants had flopped over the most and had smothered the most of the boxwoods out. Like one side was always a little bit more favored than the other. Lisa said, good morning, Laura. Are there any small trees that you would suggest besides Japanese maples that would be suitable for large containers? The containers I have might be even larger than the one you have and are bottomless. I've been struggling with finding something that can stay in the pot. Boy, you can do a lot of different things. So long as the tree doesn't want to get massive, you can keep a lot of like smaller growing trees in containers for a lot of time, especially if it's a bottomless container.
What are some examples?
Like small growing crab apples, red buds, small growing red buds would be great.
You just go to the garden center and look for anything that says dwarf?
Yeah, dwarf, semi-dwarf, like anything that wants to get 10 to 15 feet tall. I think absolutely put it in a container. The Japanese maple that I planted, the Bloodgood says, the tag says it gets bigger than that, but they don't in our area. They're more of an accent sort of tree. Or a large shrub in some and most cases. So yeah, I think you could get away with quite a lot. You just want to make sure it's not a tree that wants to get 75 feet tall and 35 feet wide. It might be happy this year, maybe next year, but eventually it's going to want to be out of that container. Tammy said, have you ever considered doing bottomless pots like Bunny Guinness for your trees? You will still get the look of the pot, but the roots have room to grow into the ground. If I had my pots in very permanent locations, I would probably consider that, but I kind of see pots as movable. And so I always want to have the ability to move the containers. And that doesn't mean one day I won't do that. It's a very smart and good idea to have a bottomless pot like that, especially if like this is where the plant is going to live forever. Sort of like if it's part of a big design.
Yeah.
And, you know, you want it to be like that forever, that's great. Mark and Kara said, why did you not plant the maple in the ground in that spot? Because I want to be able to move it. If I want to, again, with the container being movable. Also, plants like Japanese maples and pots are easier to keep on the acidic side when they're not planted in our native soil. So they tend to do just a little bit better, look a little bit better, and not struggle because we can put Lanaceae in there. And Hollytonin, and it stays more like right around the tree instead of leaching out. Yeah. Amber said, why wouldn't you pot up the boxwood that still has some green on them and just grow them back out for later use? It's kind of like the question about the daffodil. Is it worth the time? Maybe, you know, but no. Most of them were just like to regain their shape. It would take so long. And I've never really enjoyed that process, like trying to recuperate plants. And I think that just comes from my mindset as maybe a little bit different because I grew up at the garden center and kind of in the industry and plants grown as crops. And like, you know, a lot of people get bent out of shape about Christmas trees and cutting Christmas trees, but that is a crop. That is a crop that has been grown specifically for that purpose. And they've got rotations of plantings going on. So they've got another crop growing up so that can take the place of the ones that have been cut. And while it seems more of a shame because it is a crop that takes a lot longer to get to that stage, it's still a crop, you know? So I kind of look at things a little bit, maybe.
Plants are a little more disposable to you growing up in the industry than to others, I think.
It could be that, yeah. And I just, you know, I used to at the townhouse garden, I would take a lot of broken things, damaged things in transit, that sort of thing.
What was it that Jack Barnwell did at the Grand Garden Show? What did he do with those plants?
He had some like really, like he ripped the top off of one.
Yeah. But why was he doing that?
I can't remember, but people were like, ugh.
People gasped.
Yeah.
But he's another person that's like that, where plants are kind of just a dime a dozen because he deals with them in such huge quantities that, you know, any one plant is not worth his time. It's like, well, I'm going to be planting 1,000 today. So if one of them's not looking good, you know, it goes.
But I'm the type who will put water in my shampoo bottle to stretch out that last little bit of shampoo because I just like want to use every last bit of it.
Yeah.
So we all have our areas where we'll,
Sure.
try to do that.
Eke by.
Yeah. Bloom Where You're Planted said, I see you use 1/4-inch drip tubes. Sometimes I notice you use 1/2-inch drip tubing. When would you want to use the larger versus small drip? We don't use the large in the containers very often because you can't twirl it the same. It doesn't have the same flexibility, and it's just larger. It's harder to hide. So the 1/4-inch, as long as you're just doing a little ring of it, still have to replace it quite often due to hard water plugging, but yeah, as long as it's not a super long run of it, you still get pretty good pressure and all of that, or flow, I guess, until it plugs up with hard water. Valerie said, what are the pavers you used around the boxwoods at the Hartley? I love the way they look. Are they real brick? They're pavers. They're from Home Depot. They're Holland. I can't remember that type. They're different
Holland,
now.
like
Rosewood?
not rose gold.
Rosewood?
Yeah, rose tone.
They're like a cooler toned version of a brick.
Yeah.
I didn't.
If you just Google like brick, Holland paver brick at Home Depot, it'll come up.
Yeah. Brian and Tammy said, I noticed during this video you were using a smaller black bucket for debris. Did you finally get rid of your pop-up bag? It was on its last leg on a previous video. I can't believe you don't have a collection of pop-ups like you have HoseLink, LOL. How many pop-ups do we have?
10.
10 to 15. We have a lot of them around here. We use the heck out of them every day use. People that have a gator around here usually have 2 or 3 pop-ups in the back of their gator at any given time. I usually bring one with me. I think I just used that bucket because I didn't grab a pop-up bag because I wasn't really anticipating doing all that garden cleanup, and I thought, well, I have a bucket, so that's what I'm going to use today. Okay, last group of questions came from last week's recap. Michelle said, have you given up on all beneficial insects to control bad infestations? Yep, we're not going to do that again this year. We were just seeing so little results and dealing with the problem so much that we can't let our plants get to a point where they did last year. I don't know what kind of quantity needs to be spread around here. And it's not just our garden. Like, there's tons of stuff around us too, and we can't control any of that. Mm-hmm. So and I'm sure there is issues around us with spider mites and stuff that people just don't even know what to look for. And there's like wooded areas, close by. That they could just keep coming in, and I don't know how many beneficials you need to have.
I think, beneficials could be really beneficial to monocrops. Somebody's growing a specific crop that deals with a specific pest.
Hops.
Yeah, hops.
Or like in a greenhouse production, it's enclosed. You're keeping those beneficials enclosed, but there's nothing to say that we spread ours and they're not just taken off.
Yeah.
You can't see them,
If you're dealing with one crop and one pest, you can, spray the one thing and it takes care of it. But when you have a really diverse, garden like we have so many different things and so many different pests that it doesn't work.
We fully tried it for 2 full years.
Yeah.
And we got to a point last year, the spider mites got so bad and they were like ruining plants, that we just thought, we can't do this. We cannot keep trying to build up this ecosystem. It doesn't work where these beneficials aren't going to winter over, and you end up with 10% maybe that return the next year. It's going to take forever to get to that point, and I'm just not in it to win it on that for sure. Cher said, are your neighbor's ponds aquascape ponds? Are you planning another visit to Aqualand this summer? Also, Flair Farms has a great video on extending base life for hellebores. Our neighbor's pond is not an aquascape pond.
Might have been put in before Greg was really...
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
an
been there a
older
long,
pond.
long time.
Yeah, it is. Are you planning another visit to Aqualand this summer? No, not currently. We might go down to Park City to look at some ponds down there.
Greg lives there.
Yeah, so we're not sure yet. Michelle said, so Proven Winners is not for perennial plants? I've been giving them this every week or every couple weeks if I've forgotten. Proven Winner. The
fertilizer?
Fertilizer.
Does it say fertilizer?
It doesn't say fertilizer, but I'm guessing that's probably what it means. So the Proven Winners water-soluble fertilizer is not for perennial plants. I mean, you can use it on perennials, but it's more formulated for the fast-growing, highly productive annual sort of plants. We use spoma tones, like a flower tone or plant tone, on perennial plants out in our garden. What would you use on perennials in the ground and in containers? So we use, the spoma tones for perennials in ground and in containers, typically. We don't use a weekly on perennials in containers.
The thing about perennials is that, you do it once in the spring and then you maybe follow up a couple months later with things that are really productive and blooming a lot. But with annuals, they need fertilizer kind of all the time
Yeah.
because annuals are sort of like,
Pumping the blooms.
yeah,
Man.
and they're sort of like cruising to their own death because they're going to die in the fall when it gets cold. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of like pump them up and you don't have to worry about the longevity of the plant. It's like, well, maybe that's not healthy for them in the long run. But it's like, it doesn't matter because annuals are going to die from the cold.
Right.
So you just get as much as you can out of them while you can.
Juniper said bulb lawn is a fantastic idea. For the bulb lawn, is it still okay to use weed and feed? Is it going to kill the bulbs? If the foliage is up, yeah. If it's a weed and feed, the weed part would kill the bulbs. So you'd want to be very careful with that because they're technically a broadleaf. So yeah, we were talking about adding more bigger bulbs into our orchard area and kind of like now that, I don't know, sometimes we just need to learn from the process.
Yeah.
And we need to like dethatch. We need to mow it a little shorter earlier on. And all we have in there are like itty bitty bulbs and they're thick right now. I mean, in person, they are absolutely gorgeous. On camera, it's the most
Doesn't translate?
No, not at all. In fact, I had in one of the videos, I can't remember which one, maybe it was the end of the strawberry one, I was like, oh, and look at the orchard, and I panned over, and like in real life, it looks really pretty. I cut all of that out of the video. So I'm like, you can't even see any of this stuff. Like, what am I even showing here? But it surprised me. But yeah, we were talking about adding some more like bigger stuff in there. Joni Wallace said, for those of you trying neem oil for fungus gnats on indoor house plants, did you spray the soil directly in your home or did you take the plant outside to spray, then bring it in? I just sprayed the soil directly where the plant is sitting.
It's pretty benign.
It is, yeah. Valcor Island said, those African violets behind you during the recaps are on steroids. What are you feeding them? The Spoma Grow. That's what I've been feeding everything in here.
Not violet?
No, I had a Spoma Grow in my watering can, so I've been using that the last couple of times. But they are kind of going out. But this one, down lower, is looking awesome.
Wow.
Need some water. A little swap here so you can see the color. Love Soil said, always disappointed when plant tags do not give pruning info. Me too. Also, the zone range. A lot of tags like on the ground covers, I was noticing all those plants that I showed, or most of them came from Blooming Nursery, which does a fantastic job growing their plants. They always look beautiful, and they carry like a ton of different types of and brands, I guess, of plants that they grow. But their tags have a ton of information, but it only ever says the lower zone, like hardy to zone 5. Well, okay, what is the higher zone? I'd have to look every single one of them up to be. I could guess and get pretty close, but to be sure, I'd have to look every single one of them up.
Basically, that's them just kind of saying like, we don't sell this in the South. Like, or even close.
But, some of them can, though. If it's like a zone 5 through 9 or a zone 5 through 10, they could absolutely grow them.
But I feel like not having that information tells me that they either don't know.
Oh, they know.
They haven't tested it. Or they're actively not shipping those
like
things.
Like hedging their bets so they don't like send it to places where they may or may not thrive.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the same for seed packets. I feel like everybody needs to get on Johnny's seeds and everybody needs to copy what Johnny's does. Because nobody else, no other seed company has the same kind of information that Johnny's does. And they are the best. I've learned so much from the back of their seed packets. So much. Anyway, back to your question. Do you cut back Russian sage? It's a puzzle since it stays silver throughout winter here in Zone 7. Yes, you'll want to cut that back. I usually cut mine back about this far to the ground. I usually let it stay up through winter and we cut it back in the spring. So you're good to go. And last question from Carolyn said, since you also work with Proven Winners, why don't you use the Proven Winners potting soil?
We talked to Proven Winners about that. And because that was kind of a question that they were kind of like, we'd like you to use our stuff. With all the companies we work with, like, there's no way we can prove this, and I understand that, but we truly only use the things that we like. Mm-hmm. And we only work with the companies who have products that we like. And so it's not that the Proven Winner stuff is bad. We just have more experience with the Spoma stuff. And that's kind of the one that we wanted to go with.
Yeah. So we said no.
And they were fine with that.
Yeah. Both Proven Winners and Espoma are the most fantastic companies to work with. They truly are.
Okay, so and then on the flip side of that, we told Espoma, we were like, like we like you guys and we work with you. Obviously, you are sponsoring us, but when it comes to annuals, we know you have like flower tone and stuff like that, but we prefer the Proven Winners fertilizer, so we're actually going to use that. And Espoma said,
okay,
that's fine. So
Yeah.
we use whatever we feel like is best. And if the company can't get along with it, then that probably would be the end of our relationship with them. But luckily, everybody we work with is great.
Yeah, everybody's really like chill about stuff, and it's relaxed, and it makes you feel like, I don't know, like bound.
Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
Proven Winners knows that we've had issues personally with like their Sprinter boxwoods. And it's one of those things. It's like, it's not performing that well for us.
It doesn't mean it won't perform awesome for you. Every area is different too.
Yeah.
And there's some plants they don't even send us. Like their azaleas and rhododendrons, camellias, anything like that. It will not survive here. It'll perform so poor here. And they're very open about that. I remember talking with Stacy from Spring Meadow, and I would ask her about certain plants that I just wasn't as familiar with. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going to send that one to you because I don't think it's going to like your soil. I don't think it's going to perform very well. And so I'd be like, well, that's good to know. I just am so unfamiliar with this type of plant. And I thought, well, it's like included in our zone. So like winter wise, I could grow it. But she was like, it needs highly acidic soil. It needs, more humidity.
They've never been like, here's a plant that we know you can't grow, but if you can still like, hold it and talk about it and say nice things about it. It's like, they know we're only going to talk about our, the things that do well here. And if they don't do well,
we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about that too.
So do you want that?
Yeah.
So anyway, you guys, that is it for this week's recap video. I feel like this one is so long.
Yeah, it might be.
Oh, so if you made it to this point in the video, thank you for watching. I hope you all are having a great start to your week. Have a great day, and we will see you in the next video.